The discovery. The sunset painted the Costa Rican rainforest in gold as Iris Chen carefully adjusted her lens, waiting for the perfect moment. A resplendent quetzal perched on a moss-covered branch, its iridescent emerald feathers shimmering in the fading light. She held her breath, finger hovering over the shutter, when a wave of nausea hit so suddenly she nearly dropped her camera. 3 weeks of mysterious morning sickness and fatigue had finally driven her to the small clinic in the nearby village that morning. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind. "Congratulations, Ms. Chen. You're about 8 weeks pregnant." The quetzal took flight, a streak of green against amber sky. Iris missed the shot but couldn't bring herself to care. Her hands trembled as she packed her equipment, mind racing with implications. There was only one possible father, Adrian Reynolds, the brilliant marine biologist she'd met while photographing coral restoration projects off Mexico's coast. Their connection had been immediate and intense. Two passionate souls devoted to environmental conservation, sharing stolen weeks of exploration both above and below the water's surface. By day, they documented the fragile ecosystem. By night, they discovered each other with the same careful wonder they brought to their scientific observations. But their affair had ended abruptly when Adrian received an emergency call about a bleaching event threatening his research site in Australia. They'd parted with vague promises to reconnect, promises that dissolved into unanswered messages and eventual silence as Adrian immersed himself in his work half a world away. Back at her rented cabin, Iris stared at her phone, Adrian's contact displayed on the screen. After 3 attempts to craft the perfect message, she simply wrote, "We need to talk. I'm pregnant." The response came faster than expected, a video call request appearing on her screen within minutes. She accepted with shaking hands. Adrian's face appeared, familiar yet somehow different, his usual warmth replaced by confusion and something that looked unsettlingly like suspicion. Dark curls fell across his forehead, and the tropical sunset behind him suggested he was somewhere in the Pacific. "Iris," he began, his voice strained. "I got your message. There must be some mistake. I'm pregnant, Adrian. 8 weeks. The timing matches exactly with our time in Mexico." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she once found endearing. "That's not possible." "I assure you, multiple tests confirm it is very possible," Iris replied, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "No, you don't understand." His expression hardened. "I can't father children. It's medically impossible." The words hit Iris like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" "I had an accident when I was 14. Severe trauma to the pelvic region. The doctors were clear, I'm sterile. Have been for 15 years. Iris felt the room spin slightly. "But that can't be right. There hasn't been anyone else, Adrian. Not for over a year." His eyes narrowed. "So you're saying that this is some kind of miracle? Or that medicine is wrong?" His tone turned cold. "Or perhaps the more logical explanation is that you're lying." "Lying?" Iris repeated, heat rising to her cheeks. "Why would I lie about this?" "I don't know, Iris. Maybe you need financial support. Maybe you thought I'd be an easy target. The lonely scientist with a trust fund from his conservation-minded parents. It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to take advantage." Each word cut deeper than the last. This wasn't the gentle, passionate man who had whispered theories about bioluminescence against her skin as they lay entwined in moonlight. This stranger regarded her with clinical detachment, as if she were a specimen exhibiting unexpected behavior. "I don't want your money," Iris said quietly, dignity overriding hurt. "I thought you deserved to know. I thought what we shared meant something." Adrian's expression flickered momentarily, a ghost of tenderness quickly suppressed. "What we shared was beautiful, Iris, which is why this hurts all the more." He sighed, looking suddenly exhausted. "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but I can't be the father. It's biologically impossible." "I know what I'm telling you is the truth," Iris insisted. "Take a paternity test when the baby is born. That's all I ask. There's no need. Science doesn't lie." The finality in his voice left no room for argument. "I have to go. We're tracking a pod of humpbacks that's exhibiting unusual migration patterns. Take care of yourself, Iris." The call ended abruptly, leaving Iris staring at a blank screen, one hand protectively covering her still flat stomach. Outside, the rainforest hummed with life as darkness fell. Somewhere, a howler monkey called to its family, the sound echoing through the canopy. Iris had come to Costa Rica to document endangered species fighting against extinction. Now she faced her own struggle, carrying a child whose existence its father deemed impossible. She opened her laptop, pulling up the images she'd captured during those magical weeks with Adrian. There they were, sun-bronzed and laughing on a research vessel. Adrian gently handling a rescued sea turtle, the two of them silhouetted against a Mexican sunset. Nothing in those images suggested the man who had just dismissed her so coldly. Iris closed the computer and walked to the small balcony overlooking the rainforest. The stars emerged in the darkening sky, bright and indifferent to human dramas unfolding beneath them. She made a decision then, breathing in the humid night air. She would have this baby, with or without Adrian Reynolds. She would create her own family on her own terms. The child growing inside her might be scientifically impossible, but Iris knew the truth. And someday, Adrian would have to face it too. Separate worlds. The humid Costa Rican morning gave way to a torrential afternoon downpour as Iris carefully organized her photo portfolio. 4 months had passed since her confrontation with Adrian, and her changing body reminded her daily of the growing life inside her. The small cabin that had once felt like a temporary photographer's outpost now bore signs of more permanent habitation. Baby name books stacked beside wildlife guides, a corner slowly filling with practical items for the months ahead. Her editor in New York had been surprisingly supportive when Iris explained her situation and pitched a modified book concept. Instead of extensive field expeditions, she would document her experience photographing endangered species while preparing for motherhood, a unique perspective on creation and conservation. Iris's hand drifted to her rounded belly as she sorted through images of scarlet macaws, feeling a flutter of movement in response. "Active today, aren't you?" she murmured, smiling despite the fatigue that had become her constant companion. A knock at the door interrupted her work. She opened it to find Elena, the local midwife who had become both medical provider and friend over recent months. "I brought you those herbal teas I mentioned," Elena said, stepping inside with a woven bag. "Good for nausea and building strong blood." "The morning sickness has finally subsided," Iris replied gratefully. "But I'll try anything that helps with energy." As Elena prepared the tea, she studied Iris with knowing eyes. "You had another dream about the father?" Iris nodded reluctantly. Despite her best efforts to move forward, Adrian appeared in her dreams with frustrating regularity. Sometimes as the warm, curious scientist she'd fallen for, other times as the cold stranger who had dismissed her truth. "He's probably halfway around the world by now," Iris said, accepting the steaming cup. "Following his precious whales without a second thought for me or the baby." Elena's expression remained neutral. "You still haven't told your family?" "My parents would insist I return to San Francisco immediately," Iris sighed. "I'm not ready to face their questions or their help. Not yet." After Elena left, Iris returned to her photographs, selecting images for her book's central chapter. Work had become her refuge, the one area of life where she still felt in complete control. Her phone chimed with an email notification. The message preview caused her to freeze. "Adrian Reynolds requests permission to view your professional profile." 7,000 miles away, Adrian stood on the deck of a research vessel in the Coral Sea, watching the sunset paint the water in hues reminiscent of the woman who haunted his thoughts. For months he had thrown himself into work, extending his research expedition beyond its planned duration, analyzing data with obsessive precision that even his dedicated colleagues found excessive. Yet Iris's words followed him beneath the waves and into his dreams. The certainty he'd felt during their conversation had eroded slowly, leaving uncomfortable questions in its wake. "You're monitoring the tracker again? Those whales won't change course just because you're watching them," came a lilting voice from behind him. Adrian turned to find Vega leaning against the railing, her unusual violet eyes reflecting the fading light. The marine biologist had joined their expedition 2 months ago, bringing expertise in cetacean vocalization and a disconcerting habit of asking questions others avoided. "Just checking the migration patterns," he replied, closing the app that had nothing to do with whales and everything to do with searching for updates on a certain wildlife photographer. "You know," Vega said casually, "my brother was told he could never have children. Something about radiation treatment when he was young. The doctors were absolutely certain." She paused, looking out toward the horizon. "His twin daughters just turned 5. Adrian's grip tightened on his phone. Medicine isn't always perfect, but some diagnoses are definitive. True, Vega agreed mildly. Though in my brother's case, it turned out one doctor misinterpreted the results, and every subsequent physician simply repeated the erroneous conclusion without verifying the original data. The comment lingered between them as dolphins surfaced nearby, their sleek bodies arcing through the water in perfect synchronicity. Why are you telling me this? Adrian finally asked. Vega shrugged. You've been distracted since I mentioned my pregnancy theory last week, that certain environmental conditions can trigger temporary changes in fertility. I thought perhaps you might have personal reasons for your interest. Adrian had indeed been shaken by Vega's research presentation, particularly her discussion of documented cases where supposedly infertile individuals had conceived under specific circumstances, including immersion in certain mineral-rich waters, like those surrounding their research site in Mexico. It's not possible, he muttered, more to himself than to Vega. Most scientific breakthroughs begin with someone questioning what was previously thought impossible, she replied, pushing away from the railing. Your father's records are in the medical database, aren't they? As emergency contact and medical proxy? Perhaps it's time you reviewed them yourself rather than relying on his interpretation. As Vega walked away, Adrian found himself opening the expedition's medical database, entering his credentials with trembling fingers. His father, Dr. William Reynolds, had managed Adrian's medical care with the same exacting control he applied to everything, including his son's career path. Every major medical decision had been filtered through William's prestigious medical connections. Explained in clinical terms that discouraged questions, the accident that had allegedly rendered Adrian sterile had been traumatic enough that he had few clear memories of the event itself or the subsequent treatment. He had simply accepted his father's somber explanation. The damage is permanent, son. You'll never father children. Best to focus on your scientific contributions instead. Now, scrolling through the actual medical records, Adrian felt his world tilt on its axis. The original diagnosis described temporary impairment with high probability of recovery over time. Subsequent tests showed gradual improvement, with the last entry, dated 5 years after the accident, indicating normal function restored. His father had lied to him. For 15 years, Adrian had believed himself incapable of creating life, which meant Iris had been telling the truth all along. The realization hit him with physical force, driving the breath from his lungs. He had accused her of lying, of trying to manipulate him, when she had simply shared an unexpected truth he wasn't prepared to hear. Leaning against the ship's railing, Adrian felt the weight of his mistake crushing him. Somewhere in Costa Rica, Iris was carrying his child, their child, believing herself completely alone because he had failed to question what he thought he knew with absolute certainty. With shaking hands, he pulled up her professional photography profile and hit the connect button. It was a tenuous first step, but it was all he could manage from the middle of the Coral Sea. Whether she would even respond remained to be seen. Unexpected evidence. The Conservation Center's main building buzzed with excited voices as Iris set up her photography exhibition. 6 months pregnant now, she moved more deliberately, one hand often resting on the pronounced curve of her belly as she directed volunteers in hanging her most powerful images. A jaguar with cubs, a leatherback turtle returning to the sea, coral reefs teeming with vibrant life. The exhibition would launch her book project while raising funds for endangered species protection. After months of solitude punctuated only by Elena's visits and calls from her editor, Iris welcomed the activity. The sense of purpose beyond her impending motherhood, she had ignored Adrian's connection request. What could possibly come of reopening that wound? Yet she couldn't deny checking his research profile occasionally, tracking his expedition through public updates. The most recent post showed his team preparing to return to shore after months at sea. Their whale migration study concluded successfully. This one should be centered more, she instructed a volunteer holding a dramatic photograph of a quetzal in flight, the shot she had missed the day she learned of her pregnancy, but had captured weeks later. It's the heart of the collection. An excellent choice for the focal point, came a voice from behind her. Though the Coral Restoration series is equally powerful. Iris froze, recognition washing over her before she even turned. That voice had whispered scientific observations and tender promises against her skin under Mexican stars. She faced him slowly, protectively cradling her belly. Adrian stood in the exhibition hall doorway looking both familiar and strange. His curly hair was longer, his skin deeply tanned from months at sea. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, speaking of exhaustion or troubled sleep, perhaps both. His gaze moved from her face to her pregnant belly, wonder and apprehension battling in his expression. "What are you doing here?" Iris asked, managing to keep her voice steady despite the riot of emotions his presence triggered. "I needed to see you," Adrian replied simply. "To talk to you. In person." The volunteers exchanged curious glances. Iris nodded toward the exit, unwilling to have this conversation before an audience. Adrian followed her to a small courtyard garden, where butterfly conservators had created a sanctuary of native plants. "You ignored my messages," he said once they were alone. "You ignored my truth," she countered. "You called me a liar and disappeared for months. What did you expect?" Adrian's shoulders sagged as he ran a hand through his wind-tangled hair. "I deserve that. I deserve worse." He took a deep breath. "I was wrong, Iris, completely wrong. About everything." He extracted a folder from his bag, offering it with a hesitant gesture. "These are my medical records. My actual records. Not the version my father presented to me." Iris accepted the folder cautiously, scanning the documents within. The clinical terminology meant little to her, but the highlighted conclusions were clear enough. The final page bore a handwritten note from a Dr. Lakeland, dated 3 months ago. "After reviewing your original case and subsequent recovery, I can confirm with medical certainty that the trauma you experienced as a teenager would not prevent you from fathering children. Your fertility likely returned to normal by your 20th year." She looked up, finding Adrian watching her with a vulnerability she'd never seen in him before. "Your father lied to you? For 15 years? Adrian nodded grimly. "Controlling my life has always been his specialty. He didn't want me distracted from my scientific career by family obligations. When I questioned him after finding these records, he justified it as protecting my potential." His voice turned bitter, as if denying me knowledge of my own body was somehow for my benefit. "And you never questioned the diagnosis? Never sought a second opinion?" Iris couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "Why would I? He was a renowned physician with connections to the best specialists. I was a teenager when it happened, in pain and scared. By the time I was old enough to think critically about it, the fact of my sterility had been part of my identity for years." Adrian's eyes filled with remorse. "I built my life around it, never getting too close to anyone, focusing exclusively on my research. Until Mexico. Until you." A monarch butterfly drifted between them, its orange wings catching the sunlight before it settled on a nearby flower. The simple beauty of the moment contrasted sharply with the complicated human drama unfolding in its midst. "I'm sorry, Iris," Adrian continued when she remained silent. "I should have believed you. I should have questioned what I thought I knew instead of questioning your integrity. There's no excuse for how I treated you." Iris closed the folder, passing it back to him. "No, there isn't." The baby kicked, as if emphasizing her point. "You let me believe I would do this completely alone. I know, and I'll spend as long as you'll let me making it up to you, to both of you." His gaze dropped to her belly, longing evident in his expression. "If you'll give me that chance." Before Iris could respond, Elena appeared at the courtyard entrance, her expression unusually serious. "Iris, we need you. The rescue team just brought in an injured jaguar cub. They're hoping you can document the treatment for the conservation grant application." Professional instincts kicked in immediately. Iris nodded, turning back to Adrian. "This conversation isn't finished, but I have work to do." "I understand," he replied, stepping aside to let her pass. "I'll be here, however long it takes." As Iris hurried toward the medical facility, she felt Adrian following at a respectful distance. Despite everything, a tiny part of her was relieved he had come, that he knew the truth now. But whether that knowledge could bridge the chasm his disbelief had created remained to be seen. Confrontations and truths. The jaguar cub's plaintive mewling filled the conservation center's treatment room as the veterinary team worked to clean and dress the wounds on its tiny paw. Iris captured the process through her lens, documenting both the injury, caused by a poacher's trap, and the gentle care being administered. Adrian observed from the doorway, his scientific training evident in the questions he occasionally posed about the cub's prognosis and treatment protocol. The staff, sensing the tension between him and Iris, maintained professional courtesy while exchanging curious glances. When the procedure finished, Iris reviewed her images while the others filed out. Adrian remained, leaning against the wall, waiting for her attention with uncharacteristic patience. "She'll recover fully," Iris said, nodding toward the sedated cub. "Though finding her mother is the real challenge. The tracking collars your team uses, those are similar to the ones we developed for marine applications," Adrian replied. "I might be able to help optimize the range." Iris set down her camera, finally meeting his gaze directly. "You can't just appear after months of silence and expect to integrate yourself into my world. It doesn't work that way. I know." Adrian pushed away from the wall, approaching cautiously. "I'm not trying to intrude. I'm trying to find any way I can to be useful, to show you I'm committed to making this right." "Making this right?" Iris repeated, frustration finally breaking through her composed exterior. "Do you have any idea what these months have been like? Planning for a child alone, knowing its father believed I was some kind of manipulative liar, wondering if I should contact your family, only to learn your father deliberately deceived you for years." Her voice rose despite her efforts to control it. "There's no making this right, Adrian. There's only moving forward somehow." The cub stirred at her elevated tone, and Iris immediately modulated her voice. Years of wildlife work having trained her to control her emotional expression around sensitive animals. Adrian stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes, could catch the familiar scent of salt and sun that clung to him after months at sea. "Then let me move forward with you," he said softly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness I haven't earned. I'm asking for a chance to be present for our child, to support you both however you'll allow." Iris felt the baby shift inside her, a reminder of the innocent life that would be affected by whatever decision she made. "And when your research calls you back to some remote corner of the ocean? What then?" "I've taken a teaching position at the university in San Jose," Adrian replied. "Starting next semester. I'll be based on land for the foreseeable future, focusing on data analysis rather than field expeditions." The revelation surprised her. Adrian's passion for hands-on marine research had been fundamental to his identity. "You're giving up fieldwork? Because of the baby? Because of priorities?" His gaze was steady, sincere. "I've spent my life chasing discoveries across the world's oceans, believing that was all I could have. Now I know different. Now there's someone more important." Before Iris could respond, the center's director burst into the room. "We have a situation," he announced tensely. "The mother jaguar has been spotted near the north perimeter fence. She's injured and agitated, likely looking for her cub." Iris immediately gathered her equipment. "I need to document this. If we can treat the mother too, we might be able to rehabilitate them together." "It's too dangerous," the director objected. "She's wounded and defensive. Unpredictable." "I've photographed threatened apex predators on 4 continents," Iris replied, already heading for the door. "I know how to maintain safe distance." Adrian followed, concern evident in his expression. "Iris, please think about this. In your condition." "My condition doesn't negate my professional capabilities," she cut him off sharply. "I've continued working safely throughout my pregnancy." Outside, rain had begun falling, turning the ground slick and muddy as they approached the north perimeter. The conservation team had established an observation point a cautious distance from where the mother jaguar had been spotted, her tawny coat visible among the underbrush. Iris set up her equipment, adjusting her telephoto lens for maximum clarity, despite the deteriorating weather conditions. Adrian remained close, tension evident in every line of his body as he scanned the surroundings, with the alertness of someone accustomed to assessing environmental risks. That the tranquilizer team is in position, the director said quietly into his radio. "On your signal." Through her viewfinder, Iris could see the jaguar clearly, a magnificent creature despite the blood matting the fur on her hind leg. She captured several powerful images, documenting both the injury and the animal's evident distress. Suddenly, the jaguar's head turned sharply, yellow eyes seeming to fix directly on their position. A low rumbling growl carried across the clearing. "She spotted us," Adrian warned. moving instinctively closer to Iris. "She's too far away to charge effectively, especially injured," Iris replied, continuing to photograph the moment. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. The Jaguar, despite its wound, launched forward with explosive power, not toward their position as they had feared, but toward a movement in the underbrush none of them had noticed. A small group of tourists who had wandered beyond the visitor boundaries, now frozen in terror as the predator charged. The conservation team reacted instantly, the tranquilizer specialist firing with practiced precision. The dart found its mark, but the Jaguar's momentum continued carrying it forward. In the chaos, Iris moved to capture the unfolding drama, stepping onto an unstable section of muddy embankment. The ground gave way beneath her, sending her sliding down the slick incline with a startled cry. Adrian shouted her name, scrambling down the slope after her. He reached her just as she came to rest at the bottom, his arms encircling her protectively as they both looked up to see the Jaguar collapse mere yards away, the tranquilizer taking effect. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, hands moving gently over her arms, her face, her belly with frantic concern. Iris took a careful inventory of her body, relief washing over her as she registered nothing worse than muddy clothes and minor scrapes. "We're okay," she assured him, placing a hand on her stomach where the baby was kicking vigorously, as if protesting the excitement. Adrian's palm covered hers, feeling those movements for the first time. The wonder on his face pierced through Iris's remaining defenses, reminding her of the man she had fallen for, the scientist who approached life's miracles with reverent curiosity. "That's our baby," he whispered, eyes glistening with emotion. "Our impossible miracle." The conservation team reached them, helping them back up the embankment as the veterinary staff secured the sedated Jaguar for transport. In the midst of the activity, Adrian kept his arm around Iris, supporting her with gentle insistence that brooked no argument. Back at the main facility, as Iris changed into dry clothes provided by Elena, she found herself revisiting the look on Adrian's face when he felt their child move. The pain of his rejection still lingered, but alongside it grew something new. The possibility that they might forge a different kind of connection, bound by the life they had created together. When she emerged, Adrian waited in the small lounge, his own clothes still mud-stained, his attention focused on something on his tablet. "Both Jaguars are stable," he reported without looking up. "The team thinks they can be rehabilitated together once their injuries heal." "Mother and child reunited," Iris observed, lowering herself carefully onto the couch beside him. "It seems fitting." Adrian set down the tablet, finally meeting her eyes. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you," he said quietly. "But would you tell me about your pregnancy? About what I've missed?" The simple request, devoid of demands or expectations, reached a place in Iris that elaborate apologies could not. She found herself sharing the journey of the past months, the first fluttering movements, the sonogram revealing a healthy girl, the way pregnancy had changed how she approached her wildlife photography, finding new angles and perspectives as her body transformed. As night fell over the conservation center, they continued talking, rebuilding a fragile bridge across the chasm of hurt and misunderstanding. Nothing was resolved, nothing promised, but something essential had shifted between them. A willingness to see truth together rather than from isolated perspectives.